Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, beta, today we will continue talking about inflation trends in India. We had already covered the period of 1950s, 1960s. Today we will begin talking about the period of 1970s and 1980s. तो 1970s में जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था, ऐसा है टोल्ड यू दैट देयर वाज ग्लोबल ऑयल क्राइसिस. ठीक है. And when the price of oil increases, since oil is a raw material in all goods, price of all goods will increase, right? Therefore, we notice that the inflation was double digit. Okay, the inflation was double digit. Is it making some sense? So basically, जब हम 1970s की बात करते हैं, this was a decade of sustained high inflation in India. Continuously जो inflation था, वो काफी ज्यादा high था इंडिया में, right? And at the same time, we saw that the average inflation was about 9% in this period, in this 10-year period. ठीक है. And why it was happening? Because the price of crude oil was increasing. At the same time, there was monsoon failure. And India was highly dependent on rainfall for agricultural sector. अच्छा irrigation system अभी भी नहीं था. India rainfall पर बहुत heavily dependent था. So since India was heavily dependent on rainfall, right? So therefore, when there was no monsoon, जब monsoon failure हुआ, automatically we saw that there was a the supply of food had reduced. Okay. और जब supply of food reduce होना शुरू हो गया तो automatically that also increased the price of food in India. So food and all other things became expensive, and there was a food shortage in India, because of which price of food was increasing. इसके अलावा we saw that there was deficit financed public spending, right? माने जो भी हमारा expenditure हो रहा था गवर्नमेंट का, it was getting financed through the printing of notes, right? So this decade is often called as inflationary shock period. The first time we saw that continuous inflation was coming in India. ठीक है, तो let's write this down. बेटा लिखिए मेरे साथ. The 1970 marked first decade of sustained high inflation in India. Average inflation was about 9%, but in certain years, like 1973, 74, 79, 80, it crossed double digit, 15 to 25%. This was largely driven by global commodity price shock, especially crude oil, monsoon failure, food shortage, deficit financed public spending, right? This decade is often called the first inflationary shock period of independent India. This decade is often called the first inflationary shock period of independent India. ठीक है बेटा? अच्छा, so what were the key causes? तो हमने बात कर ली है उसमें. I just want to highlight that during the period of 1973-74, we had the first oil crisis or oil shock called as the OPEC crisis. ठीक है? And इसमें क्या हुआ ना, that the oil prices, right, they quadrupled from $2.50 to $11 per barrel, right? So oil prices, they tripled from 2.5 to 11, right? And India, a major importing nation, faced high import bill. अब देखो, you are taking oil from outside, you are importing oil. When the price of oil will increase, automatically the value of import will increase. Okay. When the value of import will increase, when you will be spending more money, automatically it will go ahead and it will mean that there will be inflation in the economy. Okay. This oil is used in transportation. Every good and commodity produced in the economy, before it reaches from producer to consumer, will be transported. The cost of production automatically will increase. So there will be increase in the price of good also. So it is cost push inflation. Okay. I will just write this down. Transportation and manufacturing cost rose, causing cost push inflation. ठीक है. This was the first oil crisis बेटा, जो हमारा आया 1973-74 में. ये हमारा फर्स्ट ऑयल क्राइसिस था. अब हम बात करते हैं सेकेंड ऑयल क्राइसिस की. The second oil crisis came in 1979-80. Which was the Iranian Revolution. Right? यहाँ पे we saw crude oil price doubled again. ठीक है? And inflation spiked to over 20%. Right? So this is the first thing, that the oil prices were increasing. Oil was used in every transportation. Cost of transportation started increasing. When cost of transportation increased, price of commodities started increasing. ये हमारा पहला चीज हुआ. ठीक है. The second thing, as I have told you already, which started happening, was that there was severe drought. right? This drought meant fall in agricultural output. Price of food grain started increasing. Oil, sugar, vegetable, इनके prices बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ रहे थे क्योंकि food grain का production decrease हो गया था. By how much? Almost by 6 to 7%. It decreased almost by 6 to 7%. So this led to food-led inflation, right? इसकी वजह से क्या आ गया? Food-led inflation. So this created food-led inflation due to supply shortage. But ना ही सिर्फ supply shortage था, there was also hoarding. Right? Then we had deficit financing, जिसके बारे में मैंने बोला आपको. So basically what happened is that we know that in the period above, there was green revolution. And there were also programs like Garibi Hatao program. Now, whenever the government introduces these big programs like green revolution, like poverty alleviation program, the government has to go ahead and has to do immense amount of public expenditure. Government को बहुत ज़्यादा खर्चा करना होता है. Now, for this public expenditure, so one, there was increased public expenditure on what? On green revolution, on Garibi Hatao program. Second, there were wars of 1965, 1971. During this period, war were taking place. Okay. So there were war which we had. Okay. Third, we saw that जो Bangladesh, basically Bangladesh liberation war हुआ था, right? So there was huge military expenditure of government, right? So when this happened, right, it meant that there was increased government expenditure. And ये government expenditure को हम कैसे finance कर रहे थे? We were financing it by printing money, by printing note, right? And when we were printing money, so money was increasing in the economy, money supply was increasing, aggregate demand was increasing, inflation was increasing. So this was demand pull inflation. Okay. At the same time, we also saw that we had rupee depreciation. And DUP crisis. Rupee depreciation and DUP crisis. So I have already told you that imports बहुत ज़्यादा थे. High import means that current account was in deficit. Now, whenever your current account is in deficit, in order to finance this current account, you have to go ahead and you have to use your official reserves. And if you're not able to do that, if you have a foreign exchange crisis, so you will have to devalue your currency. Okay. So post 1966 rupee was getting devalued so that we could meet, whenever we devalue the currency, exports increase. And when exports increase, we have more money and we can go ahead and we can finance the imports. Okay. But what we saw is that after we devalued the currency, usually under normal circumstances, devaluation should mean imports decreasing. But imports did not decrease. And uski wajah se import expenditure increased further. which intensified inflation. ठीक है, तो यूजुअली क्या होता है अंडर नॉर्मल सर्कमस्टांसेस, हम बोलते हैं कि जब हम रुपी को डिवैल्यू करते हैं, एक्सपोर्ट इंक्रीज होते हैं, इम्पोर्ट सॉरी इंक्रीज, export increase, import decrease, current account improves. Now what happened is that this time when we devalued the rupee, the import did not decrease. जो import पे हम खर्चा कर रहे थे, whatever money we were spending on import, right, it increased, because of which we were spending more money, we were demanding higher value goods, so it intensified the inflation. Okay. So we saw that during the period of 1970s, there are four main kind of inflation in the economy. Cost push inflation, which was fueled by oil prices, higher cost of input, rising wages. Food inflation, which was supply shock due to monsoon failure and agricultural stagnation. Demand pull inflation, जो government deficit spending and money supply growth के लिए था. And imported inflation, which meant costlier import due to weak rupee and oil dependency. ठीक है. So this was our period of 1970s. अच्छा, अब इसको हमने कैसे resolve करने की कोशिश की? सबसे पहले short term measure ये था that since rupee price was food price was continuously increasing, put a ceiling on food price control करो, do rationing system in urban areas, ban hoarding of food that was happening. फिर उसके बाद हमने क्या किया? Do green revolution because it was a period of drought also, है ना, there was a period of severe drought. Green revolution intensify करो, improve wheat and rice productivity, right, build something called as Food Corporation of India, FCI, ठीक है, which will stock the food in buffer so that we never have shortage of food in the economy, right? Strengthen the public distribution system, right? Then we know that यहाँ पे हम बात कर रहे हैं that there was increased money supply in the economy. So to reduce money supply, increase cash reserve ratio, increase bank rate, control the money supply in the economy, control the amount of money that is floating in the economy, right? Do credit rationing. So these were certain things that were done by the government during the period of 1970s. ये बात clear होती है? Is this period absolutely clear to everyone? Okay, beta.